Dear Rentals Club members, today I am with Andrew Macdonald. He's the founder of ZenGuest Bali. And you know what, these days, being a property manager in Bali, in Indonesia, is not what you think. With not much travel coming in from Australia or Europe or the US, you may think that the villas are sitting empty. And that's far from the truth. Actually, the occupancy is actually pretty high. And even if new restrictions may be coming in on international travel, Andrew will explain to us what's happening right now on the island. We'll be talking about the big shifts in clientele. We'll be talking about Russians, for example. We'll be talking about local market Indonesians and what it means for a property management company, what it means when you have to adapt, for example, to new marketing channels, to new expectations of service, or what you have to say to property owners who may have preconceptions about this clientele. So that's really, really important story of flexing, adapting to your market. So Andrew, very happy to have you over once again. And how are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Thibaut. Nice to be here.
So I was explaining that ZenGuest Bali obviously is a property management company on the island. Can you maybe cover a bit, what the company does exactly, how many properties you have?
So we have 32 villas that we're managing. And the management in Bali is a bit different to managing a short-term rental in most places because it's full service. So we have daily cleaning and we're basically available 24/7 to guests. And that is the expectation of guests when they book here. So it's a very operations intensive kind of business here with quite a lot of staff.
And what's interesting is that in terms of, you just said the word expectations, right? At the start of the COVID crisis, which I want to say is, it's going to be almost 2 years ago in Indonesia, for Indonesia, right? I'd love you to explain to us what happened, right? In terms of like international borders shutting down, and also in terms of like how you still were able first to adapt and maybe get demand from Russians. That could be interesting to cover.
Okay. Well, so basically we were okay until February. Most of our bookings still came over, but then in March, all the tourist visas were suspended into Indonesia. So we lost tourists completely and we've never regained them. The tourist visas have never been reopened since. So, but what was open were longer term visas. They were called business visas and there was a social visa. So different forms of visas that were valid for between 3 months to 12 months. And what happened is we got a whole lot of people coming over, basically fleeing the conditions in Russia, largely Russia, on these other visas. And it was thousands of people came over, and it was a big industry bringing people over, basically with the attraction that you could come and live in Bali and pay about $550 US a month for a beautiful 2-bedroom villa with a swimming pool and all mod cons and regular cleaning and all of that. So it was very attractive. So basically our clientele, they became our clientele and they were monthly guests. So we started renting everything out monthly. We started doing that in March, and basically from April, we were almost 100% occupancy the whole way through, right up to now. So yeah, I mean, that lasted until a couple of months ago. Then a lot of people started going back because things started improving.
So from April 2020 to, let's say, summer 2021, actually occupancy was very high for you, right? And just talking about this, I'm talking about Russians because they were a big chunk of nationalities there, and you say that it's very interesting. So how, what kind of changes? So first you went long-term, not short-term, we heard that. In terms of maybe operations, services, or marketing channels, where do you find, how do you attract these guests? And also in terms of let's say, owner relationships, right? What did owners think when you said, well, we have Russians staying over at your place for things? And again, because there might be sometimes ideas about certain nationalities that needs to be debunked. And that's very interesting what you're about to say, I think.
Well, I mean, first of all, the channels that we had to start using, I mean, Airbnb and booking.com were useless in that kind of circumstance. So we just moved to, everything was done through Facebook. The Facebook marketing groups for Bali villas, they have like 30 or 40,000 members. And so we had a big pool of people on the island. Every time we needed to rent a villa to renew a lease and get a new guest, we'd have to do up to 20 visits. There'd be a lot of haggling and negotiation. It was a lot of work because everyone wanted to see the villa first because they could, unlike, normal holiday rentals where you are in another country. So, but once we had the guest in, it was much easier because then we cut down our services. We cleaned twice a week. And basically all of our costs were minimised, which was important because we were only bringing in 20% of the revenue that we were bringing in pre-COVID. So there was no way we could survive offering the same level of service that we offered before COVID hit. So basically, that's what kept us alive, the reduction in our services. And yeah, I mean, and I think then to talk about the stereotypes, so we did tell our owners were interested and we update them regularly. And they were asking who these new guests were. And we told them they were Russians. And most of our owners trust us to look after their villas for them, and they don't really have much input. But there are a few who have very strong preconceived attitudes and were very, very reluctant about having particularly Russian guests. I don't know exactly where the stereotype comes from, but it's totally untrue in our experience. So we've had probably altogether about 40 guests from Russia, and we haven't had a single issue. They've all been wonderful. They're very good negotiators, but that's not that's not part of the stereotype. That's good. I mean, I kind of admire it. But in terms of any sort of damage, drunkenness, noise, parties, nothing at all.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, so we just let the owners know that, and they begrudgingly allowed it to continue. And then over time, they saw that there were no issues. So,
And a couple of months ago, so it's last summer, there was another shift, right? Let's say from let's say foreigners coming to stay for a few months to Indonesians. And again, that's interesting to talk about because maybe also to start with, like, who are the villa owners? Because people may think that maybe most villa owners are Indonesians, or so who are the villa owners, and did Indonesians stay in villas before? And again, what did it mean for you in terms of like operations, expectations, and how do Indonesians travel? How different is it from, let's say, usual tourists?
What happened about 3 months ago is that all visas were suspended. So then there's also a net outflow of the pool of people who are in Bali back to their home countries because things were getting bad in Bali. So then we started finding that we were getting Indonesian people booking, and they were booking on Airbnb and booking.com. And because the word was spreading in Jakarta that this was, you could get a great deal down here, and the work from home was becoming much more prevalent and accepted. And so tons of people coming down from Jakarta, Surabaya, the other big city, to work from home in Bali. Now, we never had Indonesian guests before. So we really weren't set up for Indonesian guests. For instance, we didn't have rice cookers. Some of our villas didn't have bidet sprayers. I don't know exactly how to describe them, but they're really important. So all those little things we had to adapt to because the guests demanded them. They did demand them. And the other thing that we had to adapt to is the fact that all Indonesians have cars. When they travel, they always use a car. If you're a Jakartan traveling, you don't, riding a motorbike is very low class. So you'll either have one of your staff bring a car down from Jakarta and meet you here, or you'll hire something at the airport.
And to be clear, sorry to cut you off, but it's basically Bali went from a flight to destination to a drive to destination, right? Java, where Jakarta is a much bigger island, but there's people can actually cross, right, and go to Bali. You can drive to destinations, and to your point as well, it's like you just mentioned the word staff. So again, in terms of expectations, these are people who are coming with their staff or have staff, right, these Indonesian guests. So it's also very different from a family flying from Europe or Australia, right? It's like, so what does it mean in terms of like size of group size or expectation? What does the staff sleep, for example?
In terms of groups, so we were a bit worried about that because there is a stereotype about, which Indonesians share, that Indonesian travelers will try and can often try and jam a lot of guests into a very small space. And we look, I have seen a couple of occasions where that's happened, but actually it was before COVID. But over this period, it hasn't happened at all. So that's another thing that we had to reassure our owners about. But, again, they've seen over the last couple of months that there haven't been any issues. And so now they're quite happy. And also we've told them that if you don't want to accept Indonesian guests, you're not going to have any guests. And also Indonesians are the way of the future as well. The domestic market is going to be a very important one moving forward. And I'll explain that a little bit later.
And let's do that because as we're recording now, there's yet another variant of COVID, right? And, I was chatting with you because I have a villa in Bali. And I'm like, okay, what's the situation on the ground? Are people canceling massively? And actually you're like, well, you're a little bit exposed, not that much. So what does it mean? Like what's happening for Christmas and beyond? Well, what have these changed allowed you to gain in a way?
So it's interesting because when I first saw this virus coming through and the Indonesian authorities acted quite quickly, for instance, just today, the quarantine was raised from 3 days to 7 days for international arrivals. And there's more measures coming for sure. So I thought I'm going to have to look through all our bookings and check how many international arrivals we have coming in. I'm going to have to talk to them now because I don't want to wait for them to cancel at the last minute and we have to find replacements at the last minute. When I looked through our bookings, we only had 3 that I had to worry about over December. So, which is amazing. And so all the other bookings are Indonesian, so that they're not affected. And then the 3 bookings that there's 2 UK and a Swiss, if they do cancel, we can just fill them with domestic guests really easily. Like there's a lot of competition for the dates in December at the moment. So we're actually become a lot more resilient with the Indonesian domestic market. It means that we can now fill the villa where previously we would have been at the mercy of international tourists arriving. And when you look at Indonesia, that's important for the future because this COVID-19 disaster is one that's affecting the whole world, but Indonesia has disasters nearly every year. We have volcanoes, we have earthquakes, we have terrorism, we have all sorts of things. And each time we get a huge drop off in arrivals, a massive number of cancellations, we have a big financial impact. But now having this domestic market, now understanding that villas are a great way to holiday, we now have another market which is much more resilient in the face of natural disasters and things like that. Indonesians will keep traveling. They're used to volcanoes and earthquakes. It doesn't worry them at all. And they don't have to get in internationally. It's not so complicated. So we're looking forward to, in the future, being able to draw on that market when we have one of our other crises.
Well, thank you for sharing this perspective, because again, it's very, very interesting how we talked about, so how in the end, right, we all do property management. It's all, around the world. The things it is a local business, right? It's like, and we've talked over the last 2 years quite a few times, about how things were. And at first, I'm always super impressed by how calm you are, right, in the face of all these changes. So you're right. Indonesia has, earthquakes and stuff. Not every day, but things happen, right? It's like hurricanes in the Caribbean. They happen. That you will get one day, right? And it's true that also populations were like, yeah, we have to be resilient. And so, but it is very interesting that it's always a local business, and that you really managed to get ZenGuest Bali a bit more resilient by, shifting from short to long term, and, being able to adapt to new flows from international travelers, Russians, for example, or now developing, channels or ways to be able to attract Indonesians. Maybe prices will rise again, and then these Indonesian maybe travelers will stay away for a bit, but now you're able to flex, which is, again, very important to be resilient, be able to flex. Yeah. Andrew, thanks a lot for these insights. If people want to reach out, what's the best way to talk with you?
I think to reach out over email or WhatsApp, either way.
Cool. Okay. So once again, thank you for your time today, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Thibaut. It was a pleasure talking to you.